Hey, welcome to another edition of Fabulous Feature Friday. I'm Susan Bach, your host for this weekly event, and I'm delighted you've joined us today. One of our members, our featured guest today, is Angeline Hart. I've known Angeline for a couple of years and have been totally intrigued with the work that she does. So welcome, Angeline. Delighted to have you here.
I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, fun. We just have delight going everywhere, don't we? For the audience to have a better understanding of just who you are and the kind of work that you're doing, Angeline, I'd like to read just a very brief introduction.
Okay.
Because you have developed this really unique system called the Gorilla Love System for identifying 12 types of men, and you've given each one an animal name, which I think is very interesting. Your system moves women away from the online meat market mentality. And this innovative program literally creates a paradigm shift in the ways women see men. That's powerful. That's right. With their new vision, women feel empowered to recognize men that are uniquely right for them. And you know how I feel about that word unique. Uniquely right for them, and to easily identify those who are not. No more Mr. Wrongs. Thank you, please. So with that, Angeline, welcome. Delighted you're here, as I said, and I know that our viewers are going to learn so much from what you have to offer today, because it's such a refreshing, grounded, unique approach to relationships.
Cool. Well, most of the coaching that I see out there, the relationship coaches, are talking about dating. And I would say the number one difference that I have is I'm not just interested in dating. I'm interested in helping people have long-term, satisfying, mutually supportive relationships in which they can become more than they would be individually and be able to have a positive impact on the world, because I believe that every good relationship ripples out into the family and the community and eventually the world. And together, with more happy relationships, we can bless and heal the world.
Oh, thank you for that. That just warms my heart from the inside out. That's very cool. I noticed your post, and I even commented on in the Facebook group earlier this week when you were shouting out, when you were bragging about what you called a successful relationship with your husband now of 25 years, and that you were so proud of the family relationship, the family that you have created together.
That's true. That's true. The relationship skills that are used romantically with a couple are actually pretty much the same skills that you use to build positive relationships with your children, with your neighbors, with your in-laws, with your employer or your employees. It's all about learning the basics, essential basics, such as how to set and manage boundaries, respecting other people's boundaries, how to handle your own feelings, how to understand the feelings of others, how to change your feelings if you're not happy with the way that you're feeling. There are essentials that work individually in a romantic relationship and in all other relationships. And so the very fact that I have a truly fabulous romantic relationship with my husband of 25 years is an indication that I should then also have great relationships with my children, which I do.
And your grandchildren.
And my grandchildren, that's
awesome, right. Awesome.
And I'm constantly working on it. Let me say that. A truly great relationship is a process. It is a growth. And for instance, I am currently reading the marvelous Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly. And in it, she talks a lot about relationships and leadership as a parent. And the things that she has to say, I'll tell you, I'm making notes and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to up my game with my grandson in this way. I'm going to handle my granddaughter a little better in that way. I'm going to improve myself. It's a constant process of self-improvement and self-growth, which, in my belief, creates more happiness in my life and in yours.
Absolutely. You and I have had numerous conversations about your successful relationship with your husband, mine with mine, and we just celebrated our 30th. That's 30th anniversary, which is a marvel to me. But to your point,
congratulations.
Excuse me?
Congratulations.
Thank you. To what we, my husband Mark and I attribute the success to is that we are constantly paying attention to the relationship. We're not taking it for granted. We're not taking each other for granted. So I'm so heartened to hear you say some of these things that you've just said, because it's easy to get so caught up in the day-to-day minutia of what we're dealing with every single day that we forget to pay attention to what really matters, and those are the people that we love. So let's get into your program, because it's so intriguing. So tell us about this manimals and your gorilla love system.
Okay, and before we get into that, I am inspired by the lovely background that you have behind you, the plantings and everything. And I want to give you, it makes me want to give you an analogy about what relationships are like. Because good relationships are like good gardens. You mentioned that what works for you and your husband is you pay attention. I have a nice garden. It will die if I do not remember to get out there on a regular daily basis to water and weed and prune and all those things. A relationship is the same way. You cannot ignore it, because a relationship is constantly either growing or dying. And that's true of my relationship with my husband, with my children, with my grandchildren, with my neighbors, with my employer. Relationships need constant nurturing and feeding. And many of us want to believe in the fantasy that the media puts out there, that if we find the right guy or the right woman and the sexual chemistry is off the charts, then we just get to pick up our glass slipper and go live in the palace, and everything's going to be great from then on. And therefore, when it doesn't work and we find challenges, we're hurt, we're disillusioned, we're thinking we've got the wrong partner. It's a mistake, because it's not the truly healthy, good, happy, juicy relationship is not like a fairy tale fantasy. It's much more like a garden that needs constant nurturing and work. And one more step to the garden. If I'm going to have a really good garden, I have to do some planning. I have to study and find out what's the right kind of plants for this season, what's the right kind of plants for Southern California, what's the right kind of plants to put next to others. So I'll take that and segue into the manimals, because learning about the manimals, the 12 types of men, is like learning about the different kinds of plants that you might want to put in your garden.
Fascinating analogy. That's great.
The better that you understand men as a woman, or that you understand women as a man, the better that you understand them and what type is best for you, and who you can relate to better, and how to look out there at all the men or women in the world and be able to identify, that's the kind I want, and there's the kind I don't want. And most women that I talk to, and the men too for that matter, because I coach both and I coach couples, most of them will say, I know what I want. And they think they do. And in reality, they don't. We do a little deeper digging, and we start finding out what they really want, not the fantasy illusion of what they think they want. And then we start finding out what really is the best choice for them and what they need to look for. And so the 12 types of men, which is a fun way of looking at different types of men, and it's based on what drives them, what motivates them, what makes them feel good about themselves. And then the animal names are just for fun, not to make fun of, but just for fun, because it makes it easier for all of us. So for example, if I say to a woman, I want you to look for a man who is a family man, who's interested in his children and relationships and such, and I say someone like Matt Damon, I'm naming movie stars because we're mostly familiar with them, then what happens is she goes out and she looks for men who look like Matt Damon, which is not what I'm trying to tell her. Instead, I'm trying to tell her to look for certain qualities. And I found that if I use an animal instead, in this case it would be a gorilla, my favorites, and I say, I want you to look for a gorilla type, And she can actually take a quiz, a free quiz at my website about any man, and it will tell her which type he is. But so if she's looking for a gorilla type, she doesn't get stuck on trying to find Matt Damon duplicates.
That's great.
So it helps.
Makes so much sense.
It does, and it's fun, and it kind of takes out some of the worry and the stress about dating when you use this system.
So how did you come up with this unique system?
Well, that's a good question. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is, in all honesty, I do not believe I'm smart. I'm smart, but I do not believe I'm smart enough to have created this system on my own. I believe I got some help from, you can say the universe if you want to, you can say God, whatever you want to say. I believe I was inspired to be able to come up with this system, because over the years, what I have found is the deep level of effectiveness it has. You mentioned in your intro a paradigm shift. When working with this system, it isn't just fun, but when I'm actually coaching with a woman, she goes through a paradigm shift in the way she sees men. It literally happens. I'm not smart enough to have sat down and said, I'm going to think up a system that is going to help women be able to see men differently. No, I didn't do that.
That's not the kind of conversation most of us would have with ourselves.
But how it started is this. I've literally been coaching women since I was 16 and started dating. And so a girlfriend of mine came to me, and she'd been married, and I was in my first marriage at that point, which, by the way, I had a first marriage, which was a good enough marriage that many of your listeners would wish they had it. But good enough was not good enough for me. I wanted truly wonderful, juicy, and all that kind of stuff. And so I left that good enough marriage after 20 years. It took me 4 years being a single mom with 3 kids, and I found my ideal man. But to come back to my story, so this girlfriend of mine came to me and she said, I've been married, I've been divorced. She was very attractive. And I'm just not finding any good men. And I said, well, I've never had a problem finding good men. Let me help you. And this was back when there were such a thing as singles bars. And people were smoking still then. So we went out to a singles bar, and it's smoky and it's dim in the room. And I said, okay, I want you to look around and tell me, who are you attracted to? So she looks, through the room, and she goes, well, that guy over there. And he's about 20 feet away. And Susan, I literally jerked back like this and went, but I can see he's trouble from here. And she leans forward and she's peering through the smoke and the gloom, and she goes, well, what do you see? And it was at that point that I understood that other women didn't have the ability to see what I see when I look at men. So I started trying to describe to her how to look for a good man. And I said, well, he needs to be comfortable in his own skin. He needs to be at ease with people so that other people feel comfortable around him. He needs to be masculine, but not macho. And I realized I was talking about my father. And I had a wonderful dad. At the same time that I realized that, I saw the image, and here's the inspiration stuff coming. I saw the image of a gorilla walking through the jungle. And I said, kind of like a gorilla. And I didn't know then all that I know about gorillas, but gorillas are amazing. They're not the chest beating thing that we see in the movies unless they're challenged and their family is being challenged. They're actually very mellow. They're vegetarians, and they're very family oriented, and they caretake their family. And in the gorilla world, if a woman isn't happy with her man, that female is free to leave and go find a better gorilla. And so the gorilla males do their best to take care of their females and the children. And some of them even take over the child care. It's fascinating what the gorilla world is like. And I didn't know enough about gorillas then to be able to choose that as an illustration. That's why I say I think I got some inspiration.
Absolutely.
So that's how the system initially started.
And when was this?
That first person that I talked to about that is probably 35 years ago.
See, and what I love about your story, Angeline, is that you have taken this inspiration, this single event in your life that obviously shifted your thinking and perspective about things, and followed that through and have turned this into a very successful, lucrative business that not only sustains the life and the lifestyle that you want, but look at the thousands of women that you're helping in on the way.
I'm surely trying. That's my goal.
What is your goal? How many women?
Actually, frankly, I would like to be able to help every woman have a lovely, juicy, supportive relationship. I truly, my mission, I believe, my husband and I, is to heal the world, one relationship at a time. I really want to do that. I want to add a little bit more to that gorilla story, if I may.
Sure.
Gorillas are my favorite. They are. My husband is not a gorilla.
Well, now, isn't that intriguing?
Isn't that interesting? And this is one of the important things when women go out looking for their type, because they go hunting and they have a certain type. And the problem with that is, instead of looking for the actual values that they want, they've narrowed their focus to this certain type. And if I had done that, I would have missed my husband. And instead, I was looking for the deeper values, which I help women use the gorilla system to be able to do that, so that they're actually finding the man they want rather than the image they want. So my husband is not a gorilla. And gorillas are very tactile. And I'm a very tactile person. I'm a cuddly, and I'm a flirt, and I'm into relationships, connector kind of person. That's what I'm like, even though I'm an introvert. But my husband is not a gorilla. And so after he and I started dating and getting together, and he heard me talking to somebody about this gorilla thing, he said, "Am I a gorilla?" And I said, "No, you're not." And he said, "Well, then what am I?" And I thought about him, and my husband, rather than a tactile connector, a cuddle up kind of guy, is more of a very handsome and suave and loner and being cool and aloof. And he's very artistic. And I saw, again, a sleek Black Panther walking through the jungle. And I said, "Well, let's call you a panther." And he said, "Okay." And I, from that point, then started actually developing, because people started asking me about the system and saying, well, what about this? And what about that? And how can I find the guy that I want? And how can I tell? And they said, "Can't you create a quiz?" So I created this quiz about the 12 types of men. And I'll tell you right now, there's 2 types to avoid. So when you take the quiz, you'll recognize what they are. But you can take the quiz about any man and identify which type he is. Now, here's the thing that's really cool about the quiz. It doesn't just say he's a gorilla, or he's a shark, or he's a panther, or he's a panda, or he's a rhino, or whatever. It tells you, according to that woman, whoever's taking the quiz, according to their perception, a full profile, how much he is of each of these different types. And sometimes women will say to me, "Well, how do I know the right answer?" Because the questions are not easy questions. They're kind of deep, make you think questions. And I said, whatever your intuition tells you is the right answer. Because, Susan, if you took the quiz and I took the quiz about my husband, it would come out a panther, but the mix of the other qualities would be different, because your perception of him and my perception of him are different.
Right.
I relate to him based on my perception. So every woman's perception is what's important. What's fun then is, some women said to me, so I went home and I told my husband, "Honey, I took this quiz and you're a panda and shark mix." And the guy's going, "What are you talking about? I don't know about that." And so they would try to take the gorilla quiz. Well, the gorilla quiz, the way the questions are framed, it's all from a woman's perspective. It's kind of wonky for a man to take. So I created another quiz, which your listeners, your viewers can all take free also, all the men. And that's the guy's gorilla quiz. And so he can self-identify. So now he has a picture of himself like this, and she has a picture of him like this, and they can have a fun conversation. "Oh, let's see, it's not exactly the same. So, honey, why do you see me as so much panther and so little rhino?" oh, and why do you see yourself as so much shark and so little this? So they have a conversation, which helps them get better acquainted, which is a huge part of building a deeper, better relationship.
And what I'm hearing you say consistently, Angeline, is the very beginning of your program, your process is for each woman to identify really what's important to her and the
That's
relationship with herself, so that she can, in fact, then attract and the manimal of her dreams, right?
Yes, and here's something fun about this, and that is that remember I said women think they know what they want, but they don't.
Yes.
Really don't. They know some of what they want. So I had a client, and she's very tall, and she had been married previously, and the marriage did not work, and then she had dated a lot. And at the time that I spoke to her, she had actually been referred to me by a male client. And so the first time I talked to her, she said to me, I just need to tell you, I don't believe this is going to work.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll work with that. And so I started finding a little bit out about her and what her likes and dislikes and stuff were. And one of the things I found out about her is that she likes to dance. And she'd been going to the same dance club for 5 years. And she goes every Thursday night. And being tall, it's real easy to look out over the men there and decide, okay, not that one, not that one. Okay, this one's a possibility. And so she dated a number of the men there and felt like she'd pretty well, check them out. And so then she started doing online dating and was really discouraged with the whole thing. And she said, I mean, everywhere I go, all I'm finding are jerks and losers, and the good ones are all either married or gay.
I've heard that before.
Oh, I have too. And what's fascinating to me and is so typical of what happens is that about 6 months after we started coaching, she said to me, I think I found my guy.
Oh.
And by the way, they are now together. They've been together for more than a year, and they're talking wedding plans. But I said, oh, really? Where did you find him? And she said, at the dance club. And I said, is he somebody new there? And she said, actually, he's been going there for 3 years, every Thursday night, just like me, and I never saw him before.
Amazing.
We literally have blinders. We narrow the view of what we're willing to see. And he's tall. I mean, he should have stood out. It's just, you'd think logic would be that we're going to find what we want fairly easily because we know what we want, but it doesn't work that way.
Oh, it sure doesn't. And that leads me to my next question, Angelina, is do you have one piece of advice? And if you did, what would that be for our viewers today?
I kind of alluded to it a little bit before when I talked about people talking to each other about what's going on. And that is, and this is actually a takeoff from John Gottman and his 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and which I would highly recommend. Anybody can read John Gottman. I'm a big fan. He's got a lot of great books about relationships. He's the premier master out there as far as I'm concerned. But one of the things that he talks about is that we have a tendency to be critical. We have a tendency to find fault. We have a tendency to focus on the faults. And what works instead is if we'd be curious. So when someone does something that, and we'll say it's a potential romantic partner, when they do something that we don't like or we don't care for or we think, oh no, unless it's truly something that's a deal breaker for us, I would recommend that we get curious and we say, without judgment or blame, because curiosity doesn't have judgment and blame in it, and we say, I'm really curious. The other night when such and such happened, I didn't really understand that. What were you thinking? What were your thoughts? What was your vision? What was going on? I'd like to understand you better if you could talk with me a little bit about that. If we could be I do this with my husband now. Something came up the other day. I don't remember what it was. I mean, we've been together 25 years. Well, 26, because a year before we got married. Something came up, and he was talking to somebody, and he mentioned something that he'd done, and I said, really? I didn't know that. I didn't know anything about that. I never knew you went there or did that. I can't remember what it was, but that curiosity, the openness, the non-critical, the non-judgmental ability to want to understand someone else better is so, I don't know how much time do we have left. I'll give you a story.
A few minutes.
Okay, I'll make it a quick story about my mom and dad. My mom and dad had what I would call a good marriage. They were married over 50 years. And nobody cheated on anybody. Nobody was gambling or alcoholic or cheating, any of those kinds of things. But they never got to the juicy, sweet place that my husband and I are at now. And one of the reasons why is a lack of curiosity and instead being critical. So here's the example. When my dad died, I inherited his book collection. My dad had a collection of 150 Louis L'Amour books. And I don't know if you're familiar with Louis L'Amour books, but most of them are Westerns. And in them, the hero is always strong, silent, noble, protect the women kind of guy. And my dad was in the habit of loaning out his books to all his children and his grandchildren, to the point that they would come in the house and say, Grandpa, can I get the next one in the Sackett series or whatever? And he would loan them the books. My mother is very intelligent. She was a psychologist and a fast reader and everything like that. And after my dad died, I was talking to her about my dad, and she said something about her frustration that he didn't share enough sweet words with her. And I said, but Mom, he's just like that guy in all the Louis L'Amour books. And she said, I never read one.
Oh.
Lack of curiosity about understanding her man, coupled with criticism. And here's the criticism, or what Gottman would call contempt. My mother believed that she was better educated than my dad. And Louis L'Amour books were not good literary. They were not good literature. They were just, dime cheap novel kind of stuff. And so she never read them and lost an opportunity to better understand her man.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that story. That's a great reminder for me, is to not dismiss or discount something without some real inquisition, without some asking, or without some explanation.
Yes.
And I like you, I love the word curious. I am curious. That's why I ask so many questions. And so it's, for me, I think that's part of the vibrancy in the relationship that I have with Mark, certainly in the relationship I have with clients, with friends, because I am curious. Tell me more. I'm kind of a person. I don't assume to know. I want to hear it from them. So we're just in the final minutes of this, and I really want you to talk some more about this free gift that you have for our viewers and your quiz. So please.
Okay. So anybody can take my quiz for free. They go to my website, gorillalove.com, Gorilla, gorilla, like regular animal gorilla, gorillalove.com. And the men can take the guys' gorilla quiz. The women can take the gorilla quiz. There's also even a third quiz on there called the maturity quiz, and it will explain when you take the gorilla quiz why you should also take the maturity quiz. But anybody, all of your listeners, if they take any of those quizzes, I will send them a free copy of my ebook, The 12 Types of Men. So it explains all those 12 types. And it's actually the first chapter from my best-selling book, which is on Amazon. It's an Amazon bestseller, the title of which is Gorillas Make Great Lovers. But it's a fun ebook, and I will be more than happy to send it to all of your viewers so that they can better understand themselves, if it's a man, or the men in their lives, if it's a woman.
Oh, that's awesome. And I will post the link, the URL, just above the video in the page, so that you can easily just click on the link. And when they go to gorillalove.com, Angeline, is there a particular tab or something that they need to click on to take the quiz?
Right on the very first screen that they see, there's a little bar and it says take the gorilla quiz. You click there and it'll take you to all three of them.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, this has just been so fun. I'm always intrigued with conversations with you, because I learn something every time we talk, which is wonderful.
Good.
So any closing thoughts, parting comments, words of inspiration you'd like to share with our audience?
I actually do have another thing, and that is that...
How did I know that?
relationships are on a spectrum. And the very, very best relationships, we're going to say, are over here on this side. The very worst are human trafficking.
Oof.
Where people
Oh.
are using each other for evil purposes, and people being used and trapped and all of that. And so I actually am trying to do two things. I'm trying to build the healthy end of the spectrum, and I'm trying to put out efforts to stop this evil, where this can heal the world, this can destroy the world.
Oh, and the spirit, oh my gosh, so quickly.
So I would ask your readers your listeners and your viewers to look for opportunities to build their own relationships and opportunities to support the many different people, such as Ashton Kutcher or Carrie Underwood. There's a number of famous people out there that have started different causes, and you can donate to them to help stop human trafficking.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Angeline. I've so enjoyed our time together today. And for our viewers, thank you. Thank you for making this group as strong and powerful and vibrant as it is, and for wanting to make your relationships even more than what they are. So with that, I'll close out for today. Thank you, Angeline, for being who you are and for sharing your uniqueness with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to be on your show.
Awesome. And until next week, be well.